In the last video, we figured out how to make this hardware work and how to make these tracks and install them in a rail so that the spacing is correct. And right now I'm just going to trim off these extra ends down here, and then I'm going to cut these to length. Now before I install them, I'm going to ease this front edge on here and I'm going to paint these white. You don't really need to see me paint. So let's jump into making the doors. Maybe I can make some short doors sometime. After some head scratching and noodling and carrying some samples of wood upstairs to what will be the linen cubby, I finally decided to make my rails and stiles 2 5/8 inches wide. I think it's a good compromise. It'll be a good strong door because these are over 60 inches tall, but it'll be narrow enough that the doors don't look too heavy for the area where they're going to be. So what I've done is I've ripped all my stock to the 2 5/8 inch width, and now I've gone and I've used chalk and I've marked out the rough length. Now the lengths that I've marked out are a couple of inches too long. We'll cut them to finished length later, but I wanted to get those marked out so that I could visualize where in the board each cut is coming from. And as I was able to do that, I was able to lay out the boards in the order the way they look the best. And now I've got everything labeled. So, for example, this is the right-hand door, the right-hand side style. This is the left-hand door and the left-hand side style. And all of the rails are labeled as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to cut these to their rough length. And then we'll get started cutting the groove in the edge to receive the insert. Now, as I mentioned before, this is just a rough cut to length. I'm not getting them to the exact length. I'm just getting them smaller so they're a little easier to work with. So my cut doesn't have to be real exact. Same thing goes for my rails. I'm going to cut a little bit off the ends simply because the ends are rough. And then where I've got these two marks here, I'm just going to make one cut in the middle. I got to cut these down to the exact length later anyway. After cutting everything to rough length, I've laid it back out here on my outfeed table just to get one last look at it in the order in which it'll be assembled. I had a couple of design considerations. First of all, I had decided that the left-hand sliding door will be in the front track, and my right-hand sliding door will be in the rear track. As a result, that door that's in the rear track will be a little bit in shadow. And since I had two styles that were a little bit darker maple and two styles that were a little bit lighter, I put the lighter colored maple on the right-hand side, again, because it will be recessed a little bit because of the track. The other consideration that I had is that when the doors are closed, these two styles will be next to each other. Pretty much just about like that. And I wanted the grain pattern in those two styles to look very similar, so that when the doors are closed, it all looks really nice. Now I know that might sound a little picky, but hey, you know, these are my doors. I can be picky. I'll bet when you're building something for yourself, you're pretty picky too. There is one more very important thing that I want to do while I've got my mock layout set up here, and that's that I want to mark the edges that are going to get the grooves. Now, of course, this mid rail, this center rail, is going to get a groove on both sides, but we're still going to mark it. It's just good practice to be in. All right. And I've got the insides of these marked. I'm going to go ahead and get these marked. That way I won't make a mistake. Before we go into the setup for cutting the grooves for the inserts, let's talk about the inserts themselves just for a minute. As I mentioned in the previous video, I have a couple of closet doors in the room where this hall is heading that have frosted glass inserts, and I wanted this to have frosted glass inserts to provide a transition between the bathroom, hallway, and that next room. But when I priced frosted glass, it has to be tempered. It's really expensive. So I found a source for acrylic. It's basically like plexiglass. It looks just like frosted glass. The company will cut to the exact dimensions that you provide, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to order those inserts. Now they're going to be 1/4 inch thick, so we're going to need to cut 1/4 inch grooves along the insides of the rails and stiles to accommodate those inserts. So let's get that set up. Okay, we've got now established that we have a 1/4 inch thick insert, and we have 3/4 inch stock, and I'd like the inserts to go in 1/4 inch. So we need a 1/4 inch wide groove, a 1/4 inch deep, dead center in the middle of these rails and stiles. Sounds pretty simple, but as Mies van der Rohe said, God is in the details. What I've done is I've set up the blade on my saw stop to be 1/4 inch above the table. And I've set the edge, the inside edge of the blade, exactly 1/4 inch from the fence. And if all goes well, I should be able to run this board through, turn it around, and run the board through. And since I have a 1/8 inch kerf, roughly, on the blade, I should wind up making a 1/4 inch groove, 1/4 inch from each edge. But the only way to be sure of that is to test, test, and retest until we're really sure. So I'm going to grab some scrap and let's make a test cut. All right, this is a piece that I cut off the end of one of the stile pieces, so it's exactly the same thickness. Let's do a test cut. All right, I've got my digital caliper here. If I can get it to come on, there we go. Let's zero it out. Let's check this and see how we did. Oh my goodness, exactly 1/4 inch. Let's check this other one. 1/4 inch. Let's check the inside dimension. 1/4 inch. Oh my goodness. Well, we got lucky. All right, looks like we are ready to cut some grooves. All right, we're ready to go. I've added a feather board here just to make sure I keep my boards up tight to the fence. And I think we're ready to go. I want to make sure I do my marked edge. run it through, turn it, run it through again. And that's all there is to it. So let's just keep going. Now this is one of my middle rails, so it's going to get a groove on both sides. All right, let's take a look now at how we're going to cut the tenons for our joinery in these doors. These are going to be haunched tenons. This line here will be the shoulder of the tenon. Everything out that way will be tenon, and everything this way will just be rail. This corner, this section down here with these lines, will be completely cut away. And then everything that's left will be reduced in thickness from both sides until we get to 1/4 inch thickness. This little section right here will go into the groove in our stile, and this longer section will go into a mortise that we will cut later in our stiles. And this will be an additional 1 inch in, giving us a lot of rack resistance and a lot of extra gluing surface. So let's get started in setting up the cuts for this. My first step in making the haunched tenons is to define the shoulders. And the way I'm going to do that is at the table saw. I've got my miter gauge here. I've got a piece of wood clamped to my fence, and I've got the fence adjusted so that when I push this piece of wood up, it'll be in exactly the right place for this first cut. And just as the workpiece clears this piece of wood, it'll make contact with the blade and go across. Now, as far as the height of the blade, you'll recall I had that set at 1/4 inch. I have actually lowered that by 1/64 of an inch. And there's a reason for that. I'll get to that in just a little bit. But overall, I think we're ready to cut. And then I'm just going to turn it around and do the same exact thing on the other end. Okay, well, it looks like this is going to go pretty fast. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of these cut, and then we're going to go to the bandsaw. All right, so back to my test board again. The next cut that we're going to make is to start to take out this corner. If you recall, we're going to remove this corner here completely. And the first cut we're going to make is our lengthwise cut. I've set up a stop block so that I get the same length cut every time. I don't have to measure and mark anything. I'll be riding against my fence. All I have to do is make sure I'm cutting the right corner, and we'll be in good shape. Okay, well, I'm going to get those cut, and then we're going to set up to make the cross cut that'll remove this corner. All right, for my cross cut now, I've done essentially the same thing. The fence didn't change, the location of the fence, because this square that's being cut out is, well, square. And I've taken my miter gauge and I can simply push the piece of wood up to it, and I've set a stop block here because I don't want to overcut that corner. If there's a little bit left there, that's fine. I can just take it out with a chisel, but I need a sharp corner there. So all we have to do is cut this corner, flip it, cut the other corner, and we're good to go. So we're ready to continue to cut now. We'll get the rest of these little corners cut away. And like I said, if there's a little bit to break out there and there's a little bit of chiseling necessary to clean that up, that's better than overcutting the joint. By the way, somebody is going to chide me for not bringing my blade guide down further. I did that for the camera, and frankly with the Rikon, it's so stable and straight. With this wood slicer blade, there's really not any need for it. Okay, now you may have noticed that I have not been cutting the notches out on the middle rails, and the reason for that is because on the middle rail across the door we're going to have a full tenon, no haunched tenon there. All right, with the corners cut away, we're now back over here to the table saw with the original setup unchanged from when we made the shoulder cuts for the tenons. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to move the fence incrementally closer and closer to the blade, which of course will be moving this out, and I'll be able to nibble away the stock here to get to our finished tenon. Now you'll recall I said that I had lowered the blade just a smidge from its setup to make the grooves, and the reason for that is because doing this on the table saw, the tenon is going to have kind of a rough surface, but by making it just a little bit thicker than it needs to be as the finished product, I'll be able to smooth that down with a shoulder plane and it'll look great. So we're ready to go. I just need to move this over, and I think I'm going to move it about 1/16 of an inch. That'll give me a much wider space here, and after that I won't even use the fence. I'll just freehand move this until I get all the stock nibbled away. So let's move this fence over. And this is my test piece. So let's make our first cut on this. Now at this point I can freehand off of this stop block here and just start nibbling this away. And if I go about a half a kerf width at a time, the sides of my tenon will wind up being smoother. And you can see what we're getting to right here. Starting to get there. Looking good. When I cut from the other side, of course, this will go away. And all we'll be left with is this little piece out here, which is good. That's exactly what we want. So we're ready to go. I've been trying to get the light adjusted just right so you could see the little ridges that are left by the table saw blade. But I put a micrometer on this after both sides were cut, and it's 5 1/128ths of an inch over thickness. So any of those little ridges are going to be so easy to get rid of. I'm going to use my shoulder plane, but you could even use sandpaper wrapped around a sanding block. It'll be so easy. But of course, we'll wait to do that until after the mortises are cut so we can really sneak up on a super tight fit. And the mortises are what we're going to do next. It'll be in the next video. So be sure to come back for that. And thank you so much for watching this one.